Awesome. Okay, so we're going to start by, if you were here last week, we ended with commitments. We always end with our commitments and what we want to put into action. And we were really thinking about Emily's lesson on mindful eating and like paying attention to the signals of our body. So I'd just love to open it up and hear how your commitments went, and if there's anything that you feel like you learned about yourself or what happens when you're trying to do mindful eating.
I'll start. My commitment specific to last week was to have snacks available so that I knew that I always had a healthy option available when I started getting hungry, and wouldn't just like go for whatever, junk food was most convenient. And that definitely was helpful, like just making more, realizing like, okay, like I've got snacks for the next couple of days, but okay, I need to go to the store and be mindful about like, okay, what I'm picking up. Things that I wasn't so great with. I didn't want to drink during the week. And then I hung out with my sister and she was like, oh, would you like a beverage? And I like didn't like, I need to work on being able to say no and keeping to the commitment, even when I have the peer pressure, because it's like, I'm like, oh, I don't really like, I can, but like, and then I feel bad and I want to like protect like how they feel. I don't want to make them feel bad for saying no. So anyways, that's something that I realize I really need to work on, is sticking up for myself and just doing it in a way that is polite and, but anyways,
Totally.
yeah.
Thank you, Rachel. I love that share. I think something that's left out of the health component a lot is like how other people impact our decisions. Like for me, my friend, meeting up with your friends, you just end up going out to eat. And then you're like, I've been out to eat 5 times, right? Can anyone else resonate with like other people and how they impact your choices and how the importance of saying no might be impactful to you? See some head nods. Yeah. Awesome. Anyone else want to share? Yes, no. Can I get a thumbs up if your commitment went well? If you were able to follow through? Awesome. Here's like a middle ground. Okay, awesome. Okay, perfect. I'm just going to give you a minute to write down if there's anything that you need to do to change your commitment moving forward. So Rachel just shared, she needs to be able to say no, or maybe set a goal around that and that sort of thing. If you weren't here last week, or you missed week 1, I think all of you were here for week 1. I've been sending out the recording so you can go back and hear Emily's lesson as well. Awesome. So I'll just give you a minute to go ahead and write down if there's anything you need to switch up or adjust for the week forward while I'm pulling up my screen for this lesson. All right. Lots of like very big topics I'm going to throw at you in these 25 minutes today. So I'll go ahead and get started. Obviously, you can go check out the recording and spend some more time thinking about these things. And then again, we dig into it a lot more in Balanced Mind, Balanced Body. But these 2 things are something I talk about all the time. So if you've done Balanced Mind, Balanced Body before, or you've been in any of my programs, these are 2 big things that I really push in a lot of different areas, but I think they directly impact health, maybe more than anything else. So the first thing is rebuilding self-trust, and we're just going to briefly touch on this. So you might be thinking, okay, like self-trust, what are these like, emotional things that have to do with my eating? This isn't really the thing. Like, let me hear about how many more apples I'm supposed to eat. But these are the things that are happening underneath your choices and are actually impacting what happens and are holding you back from the actions that you're wanting to take versus the actions that you are taking on the daily. So rebuilding self-trust, the metaphor I love describing is, all of these things have happened to us throughout our lives in a lot of different ways in our health, and that impacts the choices that we make today. And a lot of people come to me and they say, Mackenzie, I just like don't have the willpower. I've been wanting to do these things. I just don't know why I can't eat right. I don't know why I can't follow through with my goals. Like, what's wrong with me? And they just take all the blame on themselves. And it's really not about you and who you are as a person. It's about all the things that have happened to you and how those things are directly impacting your mindset and what's happening in your subconscious, so that the decisions that you're able to make today. So the example that I love to share is, let's say a friend says that they are going to meet you for coffee at 8 a.m. tomorrow at Communal, is a place over here. And they say, I can't wait to see you at 8 a.m. tomorrow. I'm not a morning person. I show up at 8 a.m. ready to talk. And she doesn't show up. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Can we reschedule for tomorrow? And I show up tomorrow and she doesn't come. Day after day, same promise, and she doesn't show up. How long is it before I stop believing that it's going to happen? Probably not even very long, right? And so that example of your trust in her is what's happening to us and our trust in ourselves when we tell ourselves over and over again that we're going to do these things, we're going to commit to these things, and then they don't happen, right? So this has happened to all of us all throughout our lives in many different capacities. There's no person who has ever not broken a promise to themselves. But understanding how these things impact you and starting to make conscious choices to rebuild that self-trust is what's going to make the difference. So if you think of, all the times in your health journey, or all the times you've told yourself you're going to get healthy or make these changes or do things differently, there's probably a lot of different scenarios that pop into your head, right? For me, there's a lot of different times that I've been like, all right, now I'm going to get back on track with healthy eating, and I'm going to start going to the gym 3 times a week, 5 times a week, whatever, different times throughout my life. And then for a multitude of reasons, it just does not happen. And every time that happens, you've like broken your trust, and there's you not showing up for coffee again. So now when you come to the summer wellness series and you're like, all right, reset, these are the things I want to focus on. It can feel harder for you to actually follow through just based on what's happening in your subconscious. And when your subconscious is saying, hey, Mackenzie, you've said that you've been to a program before, you said you were going to do this thing and you didn't do it. Like, what makes this time different, right? So even when you are trying and you feel like you have that willpower and you're like ready to do the thing, there's things happening within your mind that if you don't have the awareness about them, they're actually controlling what's happening to you. So rebuilding self-trust is super important. So every time you go into something and you're thinking about, okay, how can I do this in a realistic way? These are the things that I want you to think about. So in Balanced Mind, Balanced Body, Emily and I's program together, and then some of my other group coaching programs, we have a daily action you follow through with every single day that's leading you on the path to where you want to be. And the other thing that's happening that people don't always understand, except for that I talk about it a lot, is that you following through with that thing every single day is leading you on the path, which is super great. But the other thing that's happening is you're rebuilding that self-trust, because every single day, no matter what happens, you're following through with that action. And that narrative about you are not a person that follows through is shifting to, oh, you are a person that follows through, right? You just did that for 8 weeks in a row. So like choosing those small things and doing them no matter what happens, job changes, getting sick, and rebuilding that self-trust is such an important component, and not even like getting you to where you want to be in your health journey, but just like rewiring your brain and the habits that you're able to take on. So when you sit down and you set a goal, whether it's with us or by yourself, these are the things I really want you to give weight to, and not even like being able to follow through, but the importance of actually following through. So instead of just being like on that motivation kick and you're like, all right, I'm going to go to the gym. We talked about the all or nothing mindset. I want you to sit down and be like, okay, Mackenzie, you said you were going to go to the gym 5 times. Is that actually realistic for you to do this week? Oh, no, you have 8 hours of meetings. You probably can't do that, right? So actually getting real with yourself and taking the time to look at your schedule and look what's going on in your life and be like, is this something that I can follow through with? The other thing that I really push is choosing something small to start with and adding something in instead of taking something away. So maybe, you've come to the summer wellness series, you've heard 2 lessons so far, and you're like, all right, here's the 4 things that I want to implement. Love it. So glad. Happy when everyone, like, people take on things and they're ready to go. But I always push for a person to choose one thing that they will follow through with, no matter what else happens, right? So if you've decided you're going to go to the gym 3 times and drink 60 ounces of water every day and go on, get 8,000 steps in a day, like those are all wonderful. And I believe that we can do those things, but no matter what happens, I want you to choose one of those things to really focus on and follow through with. Just like a small thing, a small addition, and rebuilding that self-trust. The other thing is setting a time period to your goals. So when we're just like, all right, here's all the things that we're going to do, and then we don't set any deadline for our brain, it can be like, whoa, Mackenzie, you're going to do this for the rest of your life. Like that seems like a lot. So just adding a date for you to shoot for, whether that's 1 week or a month or 6 weeks, whatever like feels right to you, is really powerful. So thinking about how you can rebuild your self-trust, how that shows up in your life, and then how you can use these new tools to rebuild that self-trust within you. Okay, so that's a very big thing to think about. And then the thing we're going to dive into today, if you have your notebook, is how narratives and self-talk impact your health and fitness goals. So obviously the what's coming up with for you in rebuilding self-trust, or maybe you don't even have that awareness yet, is part of this. But today we're going to be talking about how our thoughts directly impact our actions. So this is our first little thing to dig into on an individual basis to see what shows up for you and impacts you. I want you to think about you and your health journey, or what you're trying to focus on. So maybe it's just a holistic version of health, or it's, I just really need to pin down movement more, or I really need to pin down what I'm putting into my body more. When you think about what that thing is that you really want to improve, what are 3 to 5 common stories or negative, narratives of your negative self-talk, right? So we all have that voice in our head that's nagging at us all the time. What are those things that keep happening for you? So some examples are like, I'm not fit enough to go to the gym 5 times a week. I'm not disciplined enough to follow through with healthy eating or adding these vegetables to my plate. Or, I'll do the summer wellness series, but I always fail. So that voice is always talking to you. So I'm going to give you a minute to just write down 3 to 5 common stories or narratives that show up in your life. Give you another minute or so. Take a thumbs up if you're ready. Perfect. Awesome. Okay. So now we're going to dig into why this is important to address. So this, a lot of you have probably seen, but thoughts, emotion, action cycle, right? So the thoughts, the stories we tell ourselves, those narratives directly impact our emotions, and our emotions directly impact the actions that we take. And then it repeats, and then it repeats. So let me show you exactly how this works. So with those negative thoughts that we just dug into, the examples that I shared are there at the top. So I'm not fit enough to do this. I'm not disciplined enough. I always fail. So that would be the thought. And when we're thinking those thoughts, and we are totally in control of our thoughts, right? When we're thinking in this way, those things that control us and operate what happens, those thoughts are giving us particular emotions particular to us, right? They're completely individual. But when I was thinking through this, I was like, okay, when I think those thoughts, the emotions that come to me are, I'm feeling discouraged, I'm feeling frustrated, and I'm feeling like doubtful that I can actually follow through, right? So then when I am feeling those emotions, the actions that would come from those places are that I give up again, I don't push myself to get better, and then I'm not satisfied when I do have the results, right? So you can see how starting with our thoughts directly impact our emotions, and our emotions directly impact our actions. So if we're to shift our thoughts, then that is what actually shifts our actions. So when people, like I said, say, I don't have the willpower, I never, this is how I am, that sort of thing, Zora says hello, then they are just focused on the action, and they're like, why do I always give up? Why can't I push myself? Why, what I do is never good enough. And they're just focused on the outcome, and they're not getting to the underlying thing, which can just be switched by the thoughts that they start with. So I'm going to have you go ahead and go back to what you wrote down in those narratives that show up. And I want you to rewrite them or reframe them in a positive light that might be more supportive, right? So here are some examples. Hey, like, I always try my best with where I'm at, no matter what's going on. I'm putting in the effort, and that's what it takes. And I won't know until I try. So with the narratives that you wrote down, what would be a reframe of each of them? I'll give you some time to add those to your list. Give you another minute. All right, so now we're going to take some time to think about if we were able to use consciously be aware of the negative narrative and how that shows up and how that impacts you. Bring awareness to how the reframe or operating out of the positive narrative could impact the actions that you have. So here's the other example. Those are the thoughts that we started with. The emotions that come from those thoughts for me are excitement, feeling proud, feeling motivated, ready to tackle everything. And then the actions that come from those emotions are feeling like you can continue to move forward no matter what life throws at you. Again, setbacks don't hinder you, and then making positive choices for your mind and body, no self-sabotage. So those are like a few of the things that come up for me in like the thought, emotion, action cycle. So if you're to look at your list and be like, okay, here's my reframe, I want you to take a minute to write down, okay, this reframe, what emotions come from that place, and then what actions do you think would come from that place if you were able to operate out of that? I'll give you a couple more minutes and then we'll wrap up with our what's next from this place. Okay. Of course, you can take more time or you can go back and watch these recording and see these slides, but I hope just taking some time to think about that allows you to see how just your positive thoughts could impact the actions and what has happened in your journey before and what could happen if you're able to operate out of these narratives. And it can feel really far reaching sometimes, but this is literally the gist of it. And I know it feels so easy to just hop on board with something and be like, okay, you know, they told me this is the new diet, this is the new thing to do. And just like the end of having that action. But that's why things often don't stick, is we don't get to the root and the core thing, which is inside of our control and that we can change, which is our thoughts. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward with how we can bring this into our life. And I want to start with something that showed up in my life. So wildly, not really wildly enough, but growing up, I was the worst runner. We called it physical PE in Iowa. I think that's what they call it here too in California. But we had to run the mile as a kid. I was super active. I did all these sports, but I could never run the mile. I couldn't finish, walked every time, even through high school. And so I just had always told myself the narrative that like, I'm not a runner, I'm too short, I'm not built that way, all those sort of stories. And then as I started to learn about this stuff and personal development and wanting to like challenge my limiting beliefs and things like that, I started to be like, okay, I'm going to do it. And this literally, I was like 24, 25. And I was like, my goal was to run a mile without stopping. And it felt super far reaching, but I did it. I did the mile. It was a lot of hard work. And then I was like, okay, if I could do the mile, then why can't I do a 5K? I signed up for a 5K, I did the 5K. And then the next year I set the goal to do 5Ks and I did that. Next year I did a 10K. And then last year I did a half marathon. So in a very short amount of time, I went from the narrative of I'm not a runner, I'm not built that way, you know, I'll never be able to run a mile. Or if I went on a run, I got motivated, I ran like a quarter mile and could stop and I'd be like, I told you, I'm bad at this, whatever. So that was operating out of those sort of thoughts, right? But if I'm able to operate out of different thoughts, which I wrote down some of the things that I think showed up for me in that time, were like, I'm going to run no matter what, like if it's raining, if whatever, like here's the sets, here's what I'm going to follow through with. I know I'll have bad days. So if I go and run a quarter mile, like, and I stop running, then like, that's okay. And if I'm operating out of the narrative that I am a runner, then I just sign up for races and I make it happen. Right. So I just put myself in the mindset of like, I am a runner, and then like the emotions and actions that come from that place are completely different. So that's just how it's showed up in my life. So when you think about where you are in your health journey and what you feel like is next for you, we'll focus on this question, which is which reframe around your health do you feel like would be most impactful to your life with where you're at? I'll give you a minute to think on that one. Okay. And then the next one, which is what's a small step you can take in the next few days to make forward movement in that area and with the narrative, right? So if mine was shifting from I'm not a runner to I am a runner, then maybe I'm going to sign up for a 5K. If, my thought is going from, hey, you never eat healthy, or you always end up eating out, or you never plan ahead, then like what the opposite narrative would be to that, and what's a small step that you can take in that direction to shift that narrative. And then as we shift into our commitments, which might entail that last part for you, I also want us to like circle back to this thought, emotion, action cycle, and just say that it's so funny because we think that being so hard on ourselves is going to get us to where we need to be, right? Like talking negative to ourselves, telling ourselves like, you never follow through, that sort of thing. Like that voice is showing up, trying to get you to where you want to be, but it's literally doing the opposite. So just bringing awareness to that voice and how it's impacting you, and then shifting to what will serve you better. And it's completely individualized for every single person. That's what's going to be changing everything. So I'm going to pull up our last slide, which is our commitments. We've been posting our commitments in the chat. So this could be still following through with something from week 1, from Emily's last week. It could be what you just wrote down as far as the small step in the thoughts, emotion, action cycle. Anything you want to share with the group to be moving forward in this health category. So whenever you come up with what you want to focus on in this next week, go ahead and post it in the chat. And then would love for you to also get specific about, if you say you're going to go to the gym or whatever, like get specific about how many times and that sort of thing. So you can go ahead and add those to the chat. And then just personally thinking about, okay, just like we talked about in rebuilding that self-trust, this is a question that we talk about when we're setting goals a lot, which is just like, what do you need to do to hold yourself accountable? So a lot of people like to have a calendar. I write things on my board. What do you need to have set up looking ahead at the week to be able to follow through? So as you're typing your commitments in the chat, a reminder, Emily shared last week that we have posted our next group, Balanced Mind, Balanced Body, is going to start in August, and I will post this link here. So we are doing 6 people in the group. So it's a really small, intimate group, really individualized, digging deep into these areas in very specific ways. You get a session with Emily and I, both the beginning and the end, and it's a whole 8-week program. So every single day accountability, focusing on each of these topics. Emily and I both combining our lessons and how mind and nutrition impact you in your health journey. And we are also, love these commitments, Jordan. Yeah, keep posting them. I'll post this link in the chat if you're interested. And then we are giving a free session if any of you guys decide to sign up before the group starts. So it's like, hey, you can have your session now to set you up for when the actual group starts. So we've opened applications for that. You can check out that link. Jordan, 3 times per week, a 45-minute workout, thinking about hunger scale. And if I'm really hungry or bored, love that. Your reframe. I can have balance between all foods. I love that. Thank you for sharing your reframe too. Gina, I'll try a new workout class on my workout app that I wouldn't usually select. Awesome. Gina, what app do you use?
I use Obey.
Yeah,
If anyone's on Obey, you should add me because I like competition and challenge and seeing other people motivate me.
Awesome. I love it. I've used Obey too. They have awesome dance workouts. Julianne.
That's one of mine. That's like, I don't pick those. So
Well, I challenge you, Gina, since you like a challenge. I'm challenging you to dance this week. Julianne, remind myself, oops, it switched, that I have been successful with mindful eating in the past and have the skills to return to it. One way I did this before was post-it reminders. So repost those in my kitchen. I love that. Yeah. And being able to use the past as a reminder for what you're capable of. I love that. Awesome. Rachel, I started working with a triathlon coach this week, so I'm committing to sticking with the workouts she has planned for me. Yeah, awesome. Triathlon, that's amazing. Awesome, Rachel. Augusta, checking in and listening to my hunger cues when I want to snack, reframe from grazer identity. Ooh, I like that too. I don't think I've ever thought of that, but yeah, identifying as a grazer. Thank you, Augusta. Awesome. And then Chris, I will get up earlier to run at least 5 miles before work 4 times a week. Awesome. Big goals. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay. Well, I'll send out the recording if you want to rewatch this. Otherwise, we will see you next week for our final lesson. Emily will be teaching her nutrition lesson. Keep up the good work, and we'll start with your commitments next time. So keep up the good work, and we'll see you then. Have an awesome week, everybody. Thank you.